From a time when a polar bear turned out to be not so friendly to the most infamous animal death of recent times, here are 10 intense stories of incidents when people fell into animal enclosures at the zoo. Number 10. A heroic chimp rescue. In 1990, 33-year-old truck driver Rick Swope climbed into a chimpanzee exhibit to save a drowning animal named Jojo. Why? He couldn't stand watching the animal scream and try to fight for its life because chimpanzees can't swim. How did this happen? Apparently, Jojo had gotten into a fight with another chimp and gotten pushed into the pool. There was a cable in the enclosure and it was designed to keep chimps from falling into the water, but the cable didn't do its job perfectly that day. Mr. Swope jumped into the enclosure and grabbed the 135-pound animal, hauling him up out of the water. But he lost his grip the first time and Jojo fell back under. Despite the fact that the water was only 5 feet deep, it was so dirty he couldn't see through it. Quickly, he reclaimed the chimpanzee and brought him back up to land. The most shocking thing? During the rescue mission, the chimp never tried to hurt Swope, probably because he could tell that Rick was his lifesaver. But think about this. It's well known that these animals, due to their denser muscles, have up to 5 times the strength of humans. It's also clear that the zoo enclosure was off limits for visitors, and there were plenty of other animals that could have become belligerent at any moment. It seems like Mr. Swope is a true hero. Number 9. Tilikum tragedy at SeaWorld Orlando. In the year 1999, whale trainers were astonished to discover the body of a man at SeaWorld in Orlando draped across the back of an 11,000-pound, 22-foot-long killer whale named Tilikum that had been previously moved to Florida after it was involved in the death of a trainer. Tilikum, whose name means friend in the Chinook language, was the largest killer whale in captivity at the time and could easily have mistaken the man for a toy. According to a marine animal expert at the University of Miami, killer whales are often seen tossing prey around for no apparent reason other than to play with their food. Perhaps Tilikum thought that that was the case here. Tilikum, who was 14 years old at the time of the incident, had been originally captured out of the polar waters off the coast of Iceland. Investigators said that the victim, named Daniel Dukes, apparently hid in the park after it closed, took off his clothes, climbed a fence outside the massive breeding tank, and foolishly jumped into 55-degree water with the orca. Apparently, keeping those types of intelligent animals in small enclosed pools and repeatedly asking them to do tricks in order to get their food actually makes them more aggressive and dangerous than they would naturally be. It makes sense. These proud orcas kept in confinement would surely become a little bit insane, just like you or me. Number 8. Berlin Zoo Incident. In 2009, a very naive woman decided to do one of the most bizarre things in the world. She actually dove into the polar bear exhibit at a German zoo. And what's worse, she did it during the 4 animals' feeding time. Of course, she decided to swim out to meet one of the polar bears who naturally attacked, biting her arms and legs as vicious bears tend to do. Miraculously, zookeepers were able to save the woman by pushing away the bear that was attacking her and dragging the woman back up the enclosure wall. The silly intruder sustained serious injuries, but managed to survive the encounter. Why did she do such a foolish thing? At one point in the incident, the rescuers lifted the woman out of the water for a few moments, then she immediately fell back in and the bear attacked again. Eventually, she did get pulled to safety and was treated for her severe injuries. Of course, for her decision, she earned herself a trip to a nearby hospital and a chat with the police. They issued her a citation for trespassing. But despite all that, the woman should consider herself lucky. If the bears were just a little bit more aggressive, they could have killed her in a snap. I hope she's learned her lesson. What is the dumbest thing you've ever seen anyone do? Have you seen anyone try to jump into an animal enclosure, or perhaps jump from a high roof into a swimming pool, or play with fire or explosives without any proper safety precautions? Let me know what made you shake your head in exasperation down in the comments section below. Then be sure to subscribe to The Biggest for more awesome videos coming out every week. Number 7. Chilean lion disaster. Keepers at a zoo in Chile shot and killed 2 lions in order to save an unhinged man who climbed into the animal's enclosure. On May 22, 2016, the man climbed the fence of the exhibit, removed his clothes, and approached the giant felines, possibly with the intent to die there. However, zookeepers did not let that happen, and as the man came in contact with the 2 lions, they were forced to shoot the pair of lions, which was emotionally jarring for them. It is believed that the man who climbed into the cage was actually trying to commit suicide based on a note found in his clothing. The animals did severely attack the 20-year-old intruder named Franco Luis Ferrada Roman, and he was later taken to a hospital for treatment. His condition was critical, of course. Anyone would be in critical condition after going into a lion's den. According to eyewitnesses, the man was shouting things about Jesus. Clearly, he was out of his mind. Mentally ill people and wild animals should never cross paths, and the tragedy that can occur when they do is alarming and sad. Number 6. A tragic, fatal accident in Pittsburgh. This is one of the more depressing stories of a child falling into an animal enclosure. 2-year-old Maddox Durkosh and his mother were at the zoo in Pittsburgh in 2012. His mother was holding him on top of the exhibit's protective railing when Maddox lunged forward and landed in the enclosure after bouncing off a net that was put there to block trash from accidentally falling into the exhibit. After he fell some 10 feet from the top of a wooden railing into an enclosed exhibit filled with wild African dogs, he was attacked with fatal consequences, perishing before help could arrive. Of course, both criminal and civil charges could have been filed against both the zoo and the parents, but the district attorney of Allegheny County, where Pittsburgh is located, investigated the boy's death and declined to prosecute either his mother or zoo officials on criminal charges. He called the whole incident a tragic accident, but civil lawsuits seeking punitive damages were still filed by the parents. The zoo did end up settling, though the exact settlement was confidential. Sadly, the young toddler was the first and only visitor to die in the whole history of this zoo. Of course, the zoo declared that it has consistently met safety standards of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and that no problems were ever found with the exhibit throughout multiple inspections over the years. Still, the dogs were rehomed in other zoos, and that particular exhibit now houses cheetahs instead. I don't know if that is any better, to be honest. Cheetahs can also be quite dangerous, as we all know. Number 5. Jumbo in the UK. In 1986, a zoo in the United Kingdom encountered an incident that was suspiciously similar to a certain viral internet martyr of recent years. But in this case, the ending was a lot happier. In this story, 5-year-old Levon Merritt actually fell into the gorilla enclosure at the Jersey Zoo, and he bumped his head and lost consciousness. Of course, one would think that disaster would strike, but something miraculous happened. One of the zoo's silverback male gorillas, named Jumbo, came up to the severely injured, unconscious boy and did the unthinkable. Jumbo did not react violently, but instead sat down next to the child, guarding him from the other gorillas out of compassion. Once Levon stirred, sat up, and began to cry, Jumbo actually ran off. This allowed the zookeepers an opportunity to get the boy out of there and back to safety. Apes are not so unlike humans. They have the ability to show compassion and protect us as well. We really should do more to protect them. Number 4. Binky the Alaskan Polar Bear. Catherine Warburton, a tourist at the Alaska Zoo, decided that she wanted a better view of Binky the polar bear back in 1994. Of course, she found out the hard way that polar bears aren't the friendliest animals around, and they have a ton of strength and can gravely wound or kill a person in seconds. When Ms. Warburton decided to jump over the fence around the bear's private area and walked up to the edge of their territory, one of the bears, Binky, became enraged and reached through the fence to grab her. He grasped and bit her leg, and she became severely injured. Specifically, her leg ended up in the bear's jaws as it tried to yank her into the water, where it surely would have feasted on her. Lucky to be alive, she only had a broken leg and some very serious lacerations, with a critical surgery saving her life. Notably, Binky the bear actually held on to her shoe out of spite for 3 days before zookeepers were able to tease it away from the bears and recover it. Of course, we all agree that Ms. Warburton acted incredibly foolishly. Bears are wild animals. Don't mess with them and don't tempt them. You could end up being bear chow. Number 3, a heartwarming encounter in Illinois. We all know that gorillas are stronger than humans, but we are learning more and more every day that they can be as sensitive as they are ferocious. Occasionally, gorillas even learn to communicate via sign language, which shows their remarkable intelligence. One day in 1996, a visit to the Brookfield Zoo in Illinois almost became a tragedy if it weren't for a hero named Binti Jua. That day, a 3-year-old fell into the gorilla enclosure and blacked out, hitting his head on the ground. Binti Jua reacted quickly, making her way over to the child before picking him up and carrying him over to a side door so that emergency rescuers could take him to safety. This is despite the fact that Binti was holding her own baby, who was hanging onto her back at the time. Did her maternal instincts inspire her to act out of kindness and rescue the toddler? It's possible. After being rushed to the hospital, the boy was declared okay, suffering only a broken hand and a few cuts. But we should all be impressed with Binti, who knew exactly what was going on and where to take the boy to get him the help he needed. After seeing this inspirational moment, it's clear that Binti's actions were extraordinary, and humans have a lot to learn about gorillas and their capacity for total altruism. They are truly wonderful animals. Number 2. Cleveland Cheetah Incident. Things got out of control when a mother and her son showed up to Cleveland Metro Parks Zoo in 2015. The mother, Michelle Schwab, found herself in a ton of trouble when she did something incredibly foolish. She decided to toss caution to the wind and was spotted holding her son past the safety barrier and out over the cheetah enclosure at the zoo, putting his life in real danger. Of course, he fell in. And besides the injury from the fall, the cheetahs were around and dangerous. They are predators in the wild, and while they're not the biggest cats, they can certainly make a quick meal of a toddler. A 2-year-old and cheetahs do not mix, and he dropped about 10 feet. Thankfully, Schwab and her husband were relatively quick to react, and both jumped in to pull the boy back out. Even though they managed to get him out safely, zoo staff ended up apprehending Ms. Schwab and charged her with child endangerment. The zoo takes children's safety very seriously. In fact, they did not have much of a legal choice. They had to push for Ms. Schwab's arrest. Some parents really should not have had children, and the child endangerment charges that this mother faced actually carry a penalty of up to 6 months in prison. Some time in a cell might actually give Ms. Schwab the opportunity to think about her negligence and how to be a better parent. Of course, it goes to show that in reality, there should be a few basic manuals on parenting that include important warnings like, don't dangle your baby over a cage filled with vicious carnivorous cheetahs. Number 1. Harambe. Everyone knows about this story. On May 28, 2016, tragedy struck at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. That day, a 3-year-old boy climbed into a gorilla enclosure and encountered Harambe, a 17-year-old western lowland gorilla. Harambe picked him up and started to drag him around like a toy, prompting hysteria, and leading to zookeepers having to make one of the hardest decisions in the world. One of the zookeepers, who feared for the boy's life, shot and killed Harambe. This was devastating, as the 17-year-old gorilla was in the prime of his life, and many onlookers thought that he was not going to behave violently with the toddler. He was merely agitated and scared by all the people around his enclosure screaming and pointing at him. Through no fault of his own, he perished, while the parents of the child were not vigilant and accidentally allowed their baby to climb into a wild animal's space. Fortunately for him, his injuries were not serious. Of course, scientists had a debate after the incident regarding whether gorillas and other primates should be held in captivity at all. Unfortunately, the zoo had no choice but to kill Harambe, according to most scientists. The whole matter was tragic, but according to Dr. Jane Goodall, When people come into contact with wild animals, life and death decisions sometimes have to be made. The zookeepers had to do what they did. Perhaps animal enclosures should be even more well protected with high walls made of sheer plexiglass to make it as difficult as possible for people to climb in. Following the tragic incident, we all know what happened next. Harambe became the subject of multiple repeated and extended viral memes online. He was declared 2016's Meme of the Year with more and more impressive, almost excessive tributes to Harambe. Some people even pledged to write in Harambe for the US presidential election. Now, years later, we still remember Harambe, who truly put the great in great ape. What did you think of these intense encounters? Did it make you vow to be more careful next time you're at an animal exhibit? Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.